Start. By Section 378 of the Indian Penal Code, whoever intending to take dishonestly any movable property out of the possession of any person without that person's consent moves that property in order to such taking is said to commit theft. Stop. P and the appellant were cadets on training in the Indian Air Force Academy, Jodhpur, but P had been discharged on the ground of misconduct, and on the day of the incident, the appellant was due for a local flight in a Dakota as part of his training as a navigator. Stop. With the help of P and who knew flying, he took off another type of aircraft, Harvard HT Stop 822, without authorization, and on the same day they force landed at a place in Pakistan. Stop. Some days later, they contacted the authorities in the Indian High Commission, and on their way to India, they were arrested at Jodhpur and prosecuted for the theft of the aircraft. Stop. It was contended for the appellant that as a cadet under training he was entitled to take an aircraft on flight, and therefore there was an implied consent to the moving of the aircraft within the meaning of section 378 of the Indian Penal Code, and consequently there could be no dishonest intention, much less such an intention at the time when the flight was started so as to constitute theft. Stop. It was found that the purpose for which the flight was undertaken was to go to Pakistan with a view to seeking employment there. Stop. Held that as the flight was unauthorized, there could be no consent, and as it was unlawful at the outset in the circumstances of the case, and the appellant obtained a temporary use of the aircraft for his own purposes and deprived the government of its use, there was a dishonest intention, and consequently the flight constituted a theft of the aircraft. Stop. A temporary retention of property by a person wrongfully gaining thereby, or a temporary keeping out of property from the person legally entitled thereto, may amount to theft under section 378 of the Indian Penal Code, and in this respect the offence differs from larceny in English law, which contemplates permanent gain or less. Stop. Phillips were both convicted under section 379 of the Indian Penal Code and sentenced to simple imprisonment by the trial magistrate for 18 months and a fine of rupees 750 with simple imprisonment in default of payment of fine for a further term of 4 months. Stop. The conviction and sentence against them have been confirmed on appeal by the Sessions Judge and on revision by the High Court. Stop. The appeal before us is by special leave obtained on behalf of the appellant Mehra alone. Stop. Both Mehra and Phillips were cadets on training in the Indian Air Force Academy, Jodhpur. Stop. The prosecution is with reference to an incident which is rather extraordinary, being for alleged theft of an aircraft, which according to the evidence of the commanding officer PW1 has never so far occurred. Stop. The alleged theft was on May 14, 1952. Stop. Phillips was discharged from the academy just the previous day, that is May 13, 1952, on grounds of misconduct. Stop. Mehra was a cadet receiving training as a navigator. Stop. The duty of a navigator is only to guide a pilot with the help of instruments and maps. Stop. It is not clear from the evidence whether Phillips also had been receiving training as a navigator. Stop. It is in evidence, however, that he knew flying stop. On May 14, 1952, Phillips was due to leave Jodhpur by train in view of his discharge stop. Mehra was due for flight in a Dakota as part of his training along 625 with one Om Prakash, a flying cadet stop. It is in evidence that he had information about it stop. The authorized time to take off for the flight was between 6 am to 6:30 am stop. The cadets under training have generally either local flights, which mean flying area of about 20 miles from the aerodrome, or they may have cross-country exercises and have flight in the country through the route for which they are specially authorized stop. On that morning, admittedly, Mehra and Phillips took off not a Dakota but a Harvard HD 822 stop.